facing the sector are likely to persist through to next year. Manufacturing contributes 13% to the country's GDP.
Business conditions were generally poor at manufacturing firms this year. A number of factors contributed to the drag down in the sector: a rise in competition, declining mining activity, high labor and other input costs, subdued domestic demand, and production shutdown due to industrial action. The effects of the 5-month-long platinum strike on manufacturing production weighed heavily on the sector. An almost 4-week-long strike at steel and engineering firms added salt to the wound. The strike by steel and engineering industry workers led to several vehicle manufacturers constraining their production due to supply shortages.
Looking forward to 2015, one would like to believe that we could enter a year with less strike action, because that has been a detrimental impact on the South African economy in 2014. If we could see a year without that, and we could see the global economy recovering slightly as expected by the IMF and the World Bank and so on, see a bit more export demand for our products, that could help our manufacturing sector in combination with the weaker levels of the rand exchange rate. Let us not forget that although we haven't quite seen the impact coming through, perhaps with even slightly weaker levels at the moment, it should help exporters in the manufacturing sector in 2015.
Even after all this, obstacles in the sector still persist. Demand for locally manufactured goods is falling.
South African households are over-indebted, which means they can't afford buying manufactured items as much as they used to. And that means local demand for manufacturing is falling. Global economy is not doing that well, which means global demand for our manufacturers is also falling. So all those factors combine to lead to this growing pessimism.
It's also linked to the global economy that's still suffering, and we haven't had, sort of our export growth to the extent we would have hoped for. So all of those, contributed to a really dismal performance of the manufacturing sector in 2014.
Jobs have been scarce, and prospects for them remains poor as the economic outlook remains fairly fragile for the next 2 years.
Unfortunately, the job prospects are poor. All the surveyed manufacturers who participated in our quarterly survey for the third quarter of 2014 suggest that they have no plan of either increasing job, the majority of them, and some of them, about 40% of them, seriously considering job shedding, which is exactly what we don't need in the country.
As the year draws to an end, the Kagiso Purchasing Managers Index has started to show some signs of life in the sector. But the country is grappling with power supply shortages and uncertainty. This threatens the slight recovery the sector has made, and there are fears that it could send it back to casualty mode. Diabo Seto, SABC News, Johannesburg.